Yeah, hello and welcome to another weekly Spielworxx chat. We are having a wonderful guest today, Tony Boydell. Tony, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes, it's very sunny here in Gloucestershire. It's gorgeous.
That's wonderful to hear. And Tony, of course, is the designer of gaming hits like Snowdonia, Lux Eterna, Guilds of London, and Alubari, a nice cup of tea. So, but just one thing before we start with Tony here, I'll have very brief and very few Spielworxx news. And the pre orders for The Cost, that is our next game on the asbestos industry, they will most probably start on July 1. So that's Wednesday of next week. So most probably. But I will send out a newsletter or two in advance. And please also check out the news section of my website. And at the same time, so July 1, we will start our 10 years of Spielworxx sale. So, and you will get some details on that in the newsletter and on my website as well, and most probably here next week too. So, these were already all the news, and now to you, Tony. I'm very glad having you here. So, how is life? You answered this very briefly, but maybe a few more sentences there.
Yeah, well, the weather's good at the moment, which is great. The garden's looking very nice. I'm very pleased with that. I've been keeping the grass nice and sort of clean and watered. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Work is good. I'm able to work from home, which is fantastic. So I still get paid. I've not been unlucky like a lot of people who've been forced to stay at home, but they're not working at all. At least I've got something to kind of get me through the
Yes.
day. And if anything else, we've had more work to do and more meetings and more progress by just not all of us having to travel into the center of London, for instance, which is what we've had to do most times. So they're getting us from 7 o'clock in the morning till you're normally 5 o'clock at night. Whereas before we would all have to be rolling in from various locations on the train and so on. So yeah, the family's okay. I think it's a bit difficult. My youngest is 12 and he can't go to school. He can't see his friends at the moment. And so it's getting very, very difficult for him, I think.
Yeah, it's a long time, right? Here in Germany,
Yeah.
the schools have opened in most areas, at least. Of course, there were some problems, there were COVID cases, so some schools have closed again, but most of them are open. I think this is important. But now, right now, we are almost in the summer school holidays, so but at least it's getting in a
Well,
small way to normal. Yeah.
well, yeah, you guys have had a much better handle on managing this crisis, as everybody who watches our country and America from the outside can see. We've had abysmal leadership and it's just not been very effective at all. And the problem for us is we can't really give our kids any kind of context. There's nothing that we've been through in our lives that's been like this.
Yeah.
So we can't even say, oh, well, this happened 10 years ago and this is what everybody did, and this is what happened 30 years ago, and this is what everybody did. It's simply unprecedented for us. So we are as sort of in the same situation. We're trying to adapt, and as parents, even though I still think like I'm 25, I have to behave like a sensible dad.
You are
Yeah.
24, right, Tony?
Yes. Well, it's the kids that make me turn grey. So.
No, I think I met actually your boy last year at Essen, right?
Yes, you
So
did.
yeah,
Yes.
very nice. So yeah, I remember that. So you mentioned you are having a garden. So is it where you're living? Is this a rural area, or are you more are you more living in a city? Where are you living
Oh,
now?
it's a small town
Mm-hmm.
in the on the edge of the Forest of Dean. The Forest of Dean is a very big, famous area in the UK. It's on the border between England and Wales, and it's famous for mining and coal
Mm-hmm.
mining and tin mining. And so it's a beautiful scenic area now because all the industry is now gone.
Mm-hmm.
And our little town is a little market town, and our house is actually about 300 yards from the open countryside. So I can walk out the back garden, down there across the main road, and then I'm in the countryside, and I can go and visit abandoned railway stations, old canals, all that kind of stuff.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah. As you may know, Tony, I'm coming also from a coal mining background where where I grew up, so with my parents, so next to Essen, so in Hattingen, you know that there is a lot of mining. So, but I'm glad that I moved out of that area and more to a more rural area. This is how I now prefer to live. Of course, as a younger person, I love to live with lots of other young people and with other kids. And but the older I'm getting, the less people I need to see in the daily life. But we probably get to this when we are talking about gaming and conventions later, how all this will affect us or already has affected us. But one other question, Tony, before. As you know, Germans are very ignorant, and especially when we are thinking we are leaders in the field. So we know nothing about gaming in Britain. So how is board gaming doing these days in Britain? Maybe not right now, but already before COVID and Corona.
Well, I think it's doing fantastically well. It's from a convention point of view, if we were living in any other year but 2020, you'd have 5 or 6 now major conventions. So not just UK Games Expo, but you have Aircon, you have HandyCon, you have GridCon, you have, a Baycon in North Wales is the smallest but most perfectly formed convention in the UK. It's a Bastion, it's called in North Wales, and I'm hoping that you'll come over in January next year. Actually, if we can get the world opened up again, it's beautiful.
Yeah, we talked about this by mail at least, and I'm actually, if there are no restrictions, this could be a perfect first convention for me, and also great start into another year that is probably better than this year, or hopefully better than this year. So that would be really wonderful. So we need to talk about this.
Exactly, but we have lots of small companies that are doing really well. I mean, you'll know the guys from Alley Cat Games.
Yes.
My friend, you know Nick Case, of course, from Amusement, who did Nog in the Nog, and he's still active. A lot of these guys are active now on Tabletopia and Tabletop Simulator, as you are. You're on Vassal a lot as well, and I know Jason is doing a lot of stuff on Vassal and so on. So they're not, they're not sitting there doing nothing. They are still keeping busy. Surprise Stare, of course, my beloved little company with Alan Paul, that's still trundling on, doing its thing. We've got a couple of games that we kickstarted early in the year. They're coming out in July. We won't have anywhere to sell them face to face, but there'll be stuff around, of course. There's so many people who are bloggers and vloggers and personalities. People like Bez, you'll know her from games like Yogi. She's so active on Board Game Geek and at shows. She's happy to give anybody the time of day. So it is going on. It is happening. It's just that you don't get us sort of trundling around the halls at Spiel to annoy everyone else.
Yeah, I'm just seeing here in the chat that I'm not loud enough, so I'm trying to do it in this way. And by the way, I'm also seeing Nick here. So you mentioned Nick earlier, so he's also there. So hopefully this is a little bit better now. So another question, Tony. What is your favorite gaming genre, if you are having? Because we played lots of different games. We played with Ben last year, Laria. We played some trick-taking games, but we also played John Company. We played an Infamous Traffic. Yeah. So can you say, well, I play everything, or does it depend on your mood?
Well, it does depend on my mood, but I am veering towards the sort of the meatier games now. I do like multi-use card games. That is a particular delight of mine, and it shows. I mean, I've come back to them a lot in my game designs. I just love that perfect jeopardy of this card is great for reason A and reason B, and I have to decide now which reason I'm going to implement. And if it all comes to nothing later on, it's my own fault because I made the decision. And I love games like that where you are rewarded by playing as to seeing which situations are best. So you learn how best to adapt with those multi-use cards. The trouble is, of course, a lot of games nowadays just don't get the replay from players.
Yes.
So while I might want to design a game that really rewards you for playing it again and again and really learning what's going on, something like Guilds of London that's multiplayer, or Aleph Null, which is my prototype solo game at the moment, it's difficult sometimes to get that feedback from people, because they'll play it once or twice and go, well, that was too difficult, or I didn't feel that worked the way I wanted it to, or I can't see any other way of doing something. And then they've missed out on so much. And my own experience with games like Glory to Rome, particularly, and Race for the Galaxy, has shown me that it's worth sticking with games. It's worth sticking with these kinds of games because they are so enriching. Games like Pax Pamir, which we haven't yet played together, and I so wanted to play that at Lariat.
We need to do so for sure.
There's a multifunction element to those cards there, multi-use cards.
Yes.
And I delight, and I love the fact that the historical stuff is also embedded within the whole fabric of that game. So it's, Root as well. Root again, there's all these beautiful, delicious decisions that you've got with just, 50 cards.
Yeah,
it's wonderful.
It's wonderful, yes, and I like these multi-use cards as well, but isn't this very difficult to test them well? Because you need to check how they work, and a single card can break the whole game. So is it maybe that not that many games are coming out of that part, or what do you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe this is related to the release rate of games. Maybe people feel that they can't give things quite enough time. If a multi-use card game is going to demand that extra layer of testing, then maybe it's a shortcut not to do them. I just don't do them because I can't afford the time to progress them. But I know a lot of TCG players, and I come from a Magic playing background. You and I have a mutual friend, Matias, and
yes.
and I can play Aleph Null, my solo prototype, and I can lose 80% of the time. I'll give it to Matias and he'll go, well, I'm winning 80% of the time. This game needs to be harder. And I'm beating myself around the face going, it's super hard for me. Yeah. So if you know the right people, I think you can play test these games really, really well.
Yeah, but Matias is very special. So if I play a two-player game
I've
with
heard
him,
that.
and really in a good way, I'm meaning this in a very good way. But if I play 10 games with him, so any two-player games, I'm lucky when I'm winning one, because he looks at the table. This card does this and that does this, and I'm done. So he is special.
He's the perfect developer for a game, because if he can get a game to a 40% win rate for him, then you know that is going to be a really good game. I mean, particularly for a solo game. I mean, my view of solo games is they have to be, you have an easy mode and you have a difficult mode, but the difficult mode needs to be bloody difficult, because if you solve it within the first 5 or 6 plays,
then it's gone.
Then what's the point? What's the point? You could just pass it on to the next person. So yes, it's never a bad thing for a process to have somebody like that who can break. I mean, Guilds of London, I had at the time I was developing it, the guys I was sort of playing board games with, all really good, Pro Tour level Magic players, Grand Prix level Magic players. So give them card combos and they will find them. And that's exactly what you want.
Yes, absolutely. So Tony, on which games are you working right now? So you hinted on a solo game, you hinted on some stuff, but can you tell us a little bit more about these items?
I've been obsessed since I got a copy of Fish Farewell Forever from Essen last year. It's a solo game where you're basically trying to get your deck out of the game. The whole point is you start with 30 cards and then you've got to get them away. They've got to be removed from the game. And then depending on how well and how quickly and efficiently you've removed them from the game, you can also remove the rules from the game and the card box from the game and one of the play mats from the game as well. So the perfect win is your entire game has disappeared up its own backside. And I love that idea. And I was rereading a favorite book of mine recently. I usually read it once a year, and it's called Black Easter by James Blish, and it's about the summoning of devils, demons from hell, and they're let loose upon the world for one night to do whatever they like. And I really like the idea of, what if I had a game where the deck's purpose was to summon one big demon, but he would be very unhappy if when he arrived there was stuff lying around the room. So I took the idea of get your deck and remove it from the game to just leaving the one card instead of getting rid of everything. And that's become Aleph Null, which is the name, part of the title of the book itself. And it's about summoning a demon. And because it's a solo game and it plays in about 10, 15 minutes, I can play it a lot, and I play it during video conferences because none of us have our cameras on and work video conferences. So I can sit there saying, oh, yes, that's a really important requirement in our product backlog. And could you please give me a T-shirt size for that particular requirement? And all the while I'm, cursing the fact that I can't get my wax candle out, so to speak. So yeah, there's that. I mean, that's great fun because it's so quick and easy to play test. It either works, or I either lose or I win, and I lose more than I win. I'm working on attentional shipping, which you may have seen last year. That's come along in such leaps and bounds since LarryCon last year. In fact, it's almost unrecognizable in some of its core elements. So that's something that really is sitting there until the world becomes a little bit freer, because this would have been the perfect year to take it with the final rules to the big conventions and say to people, just play it from this rule set, and get that purer feedback from the blind play testing. It's not so easy to do at the moment. It's a big heavy box. I can't really send it around the world. So I would have been relying on those conventions to give me that blind play testing. And I got other stuff as well. I got Rome Sweet Rome, which is my multi-use cards. See what I did there? And now this game I think would be perfect for Spielworxx.
So that's why we are talking here, right?
We'll have to talk about that some other time. But lockdown's been really fertile time because I'm sat in a room. I'm not traveling. I would normally think about game design when I'm traveling, but traveling is interrupted. You get somewhere at the end of it. Here I can just sit in my library room and just sit with my notebook, and I can just draw and write until I'm finished. So I've been making good use of that time.
Yeah, but that sounds good. That sounds good. And yes, at a different time, different point, we have to talk about that game, and of course of all your others as well. So we will do this. But maybe even right now, a very big question, of course, because we hinted on this on changes. But how do you think is COVID-19 changing the gaming industry and hobby, or maybe affecting? That's a better word than maybe how will it be affecting in your opinion? Because everybody has their own opinion here.
Exactly. I mean, from a point of view of a small publisher, it's a real pain for us not to be able to go to Spiel this year, for instance, with our new products. We have a new product which has been kickstarted, so a lot of the sales are going out. That's fine. People who paid for it in advance are going to get it, but we rely on that little top up that you get from shows like Spiel, and we're not going to get that this year, which is frustrating. And I think a lot of little companies will find that, that they bank on that show to kind of give the adrenaline hit to the company to see it into the next year. And that's going to be so difficult, I think. And I know we were talking earlier that it's not just the little companies that you think would be suffering.
I think that every company will be affected in some ways. I think the medium-sized companies will have a hard time, especially if they are not used to sell that many games online, but they relied on stores, and of course stores were closed for a certain amount of time, or in some parts maybe even still closed. Distribution, at least in the US, was closed via Alliance at least, so that's definitely a difficult time for a lot of companies. And I think because we are living, sorry about this, Germans are always technical advanced. So especially for some larger companies like Asmodee, and I saw Steven here earlier in the chat, and he mentioned in his podcast, Board Game Insider, in a past episode, that Asmodee has announced 14 new products for June alone. And you see what this means. That the big companies, they of course have more power. They cannot withhold all stuff forever. At a certain point, these games have to be released because they are produced, everything has been paid. But you know that they have the muscles to get into stores and demand the space for all these games. And this, of course, is then a bad thing for the medium companies who do not have that many muscles, and for the small companies. So I think this is also a ripple effect, and in my opinion, everybody will be affected, even the companies who not necessarily rely on Essen that much. But
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Stephen there, and hi, Stephen. I think something like
40,
the Kick
sorry, I made a mistake. Sorry,
40,
Tony. It was not 14, 40. Yes, he's
40,
confirming that.
40,
That's
yeah,
what I meant. Yes.
yeah. I mean, Kickstarter is a better place for a company to go now, because if you can't get in front of the people to buy the product, then get them to buy the product that's coming along. So now is a great time to do that Terraforming Mars campaign, because people aren't getting out. In theory, they're not spending their money on lots of stuff, so they can get into it. And I think Kickstarter will be that valuable substitute for those that can't really commit to going to the big shows because they're just not happening.
Yeah,
I think so.
I agree on Kickstarter that it will get even more important. The big question is just how many games, so board games, can be at Kickstarter per day, so that it's still a valuable thing for the companies. Of course, we always have the games like Frosthaven, like Terraforming Mars now, and congratulations here, Stephen, to this wonderful campaign. But there will be lots of other campaigns that hardly get noticed, because if there are too many games, the sun will shine on the big boys, on the big forests in the rainforest. So that's what it is. Yeah.
But at least in theory, unless you've been absolutely insane, you wouldn't have taken your first Kickstarter campaign having invested all your money in everything at the start. You should plan for failure. I know it sounds like an odd thing, but
yeah.
Don't spend all your money before you've got it, and then be surprised when the Kickstarter campaign fails and hey, you've got no money.
But
this. Don't take unnecessary risks.
Yeah, I try to follow this advice, but it's you know how human beings are. There is a Frosthaven campaign, and everybody talks about this. And this campaign is wonderful. The company is wonderful. Isaac is a wonderful person. So really, I'm so glad that he's having this success again with this game. But people are looking for this. Oh, look at that figure. Look at that money. Wow, and I know. I worked on my game for 5 years, and the graphics are at least as good, and I'm investing a little bit more in graphics, and I'm doing this, and I'm developing it, and then I must have the same success. Yeah, well, but it's, in a way, we always think in the best case scenario, and that is something that we probably should not do, but... Yeah.
No, I think if anybody asks us about should they set up a board games company, I think our honest answer should be no. Not because we want to keep the market all for ourselves, but because it's such a bloody arseache, and if it goes wrong, it can really screw everything up for you.
Yeah, and I mentioned this to you before as well. Let's say I want to form Spielworxx again. It's 2020, we are in COVID times, and I'm having my first game ready to go, and I must admit I would not form Spielworxx these days, and probably not even without COVID. I would not do this, because we know that there are too many companies, and if you have no followers at all, if nobody knows you, then it's not even double that difficult to have some success. It's 3 times or 5 times as difficult these days, and it's tough. So everybody that has listened to this part, as Tony said, yes, he was wrong. We want to all keep you out of the market. That's why we are saying this. Really, everybody should be careful. But as we also see, like in all creative fields, there are always surprises, and no matter how difficult it is to get into music, in the music industry, into movies, because Hollywood is having their blockbusters, and it's difficult to get recognition, or in gaming, there's always a chance to make it. like again Gloomhaven, Frosthaven has proven, or this Swedish company that then had Terraforming Mars and presented it to partners, and it took off at a certain point. So it's definitely doable. So maybe we are looking into some questions here, if you agree, Tony.
Yeah, of course.
So let me see if I'm scrolling back here. Yeah, Markus from Germany. He's also from the Ruhr area, by the way. He says the biggest challenge is that was that part when you are saying I'm working from home and having my kids, and he's saying, yeah, caring for the kids and working, of course, is very difficult.
Oh, my kids are all grown up, you see, so
yeah, well, it's just a different thing.
Yeah, they steal my beer. That's the biggest problem I've got.
Yeah, and beer is a good point here, because Nick is saying, dear Lord, you two are not a beer inside. So yeah,
I'm working.
It is what it is. So yeah, and there is Matt. Yeah, Matt of course is right. It's not 40 complete new board games by Asmodee in that month. So there are expansions and there are LCGs, but still it's a lot of stuff that is asking for money and for shelf space. Yeah,
exactly. That's like you put 40 games delivered to your shop door, 6 to 8 copies of each. That's a lot of product that you've got to ship out to the back.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it is. And Stephen has put a link to that article in here. So thank you, Stephen, for this. Is appreciated. He says, well, I'm not sure if this comparison is so good. I'm like the BBC of board gaming news media. So what do you think about that, Tony?
The BBC, well, it's always good to be compared to the BBC. To be honest,
but he's comparing himself to that, so I'm not sure. So
you've got to reach, you've got to reach for the moon, haven't you?
Yeah,
you've got to go for it.
For Mars, probably. And another question, Tony, directed to you from Matt. So Matt is another designer. He's doing games for me as well. Wonderful person. Tony, when will the Black Overcoat be released? Do you already have a date for that?
Yeah, sometime one day. I'm just terrified because it's so personal, and I love it, and the family loves it. I just feel that the moment it gets out there, there'll be just the slew of ones and twos, and this isn't a game on BGG, and people complaining, and it's take that, and it's so this, and blah blah blah. I just, what a terrible thing to put myself through. So I might do a limited edition Kickstarter one day. I don't know when. I might just say, 1,000 copies. That's it. One and done.
Through your own company then, or are you looking for partners? Is Matias interested in a German edition? Does he know about it?
I'm not sure you guys would enjoy it, to be honest with you. I don't know. Maybe if we meet up in January, or maybe if you manage to make it to Gathering of Chums in November, if I don't have to cancel it first. Yeah, maybe you can get to play it one day. Ask Ben Maddox. Ben Maddox played it when he stayed over a couple of years ago. He'll give you a true opinion.
I may see him next month in Berlin. So I will travel to Berlin. I wanted to travel to BerlinCon. But there is no BerlinCon, of course. But there are now hardly any bloody tourists in Berlin. Just my wife and me. So it may be a very different Berlin from what I'm remembering it. So we will see. And I already talked to Ben. So most probably I'm seeing him for a couple of hours. So I will ask him for his opinion there. Yeah.
Nice. Good.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any questions for us here? For Tony especially, not for me, because that would be boring. And we summoned the Matias. We summoned him.
Yeah.
He's there. I have to play that game first, but I'm interested in playing it. So you see, he knew that he would be interested. So yeah, great to see you here, Matias. Matt has a question here. Tony, what published game from another designer do you wish you designed? That's a wonderful question.
Yeah, that is a good question. I have a boring answer to that, and it's Glory to Rome from Carl Chudok.
Yeah.
it is the kind of the apex for me of the multifunction, the multi-use
Yes.
cards genre. Um, it's something I was horrified by when I first played it. I was confused. I was beaten into the ground by my fellow players, and I was hurt about it. I thought, I'm not. This is awful. Why would I want to play this again?
Mm.
And then I played it again and again and again, and pretty soon we were playing it 3 or 4 times an evening, 4 nights a week. Um,
Wow. Mm.
and I became addicted to it, and I still adore it. And there's no pleasure like sitting down with 3 other players who all know the game. There's no rules explanation required at all, and just play. And
Yes.
it's a joy, an absolute joy.
Yeah. Yeah, Ode, one of the co-designers of one of the designers of La Granja, he mentioned this as his great inspiration game as well, even in the
Yeah.
rules. I think it is to many, and it was at that time really special when it came out. So yeah, yeah, good answer there. And there's another question from Nick here. Tony, how much do I have to pay you to plug the Lost Trilogy? Uh,
Oh, the Kickstarter campaign. I thought that had finished. This is the expansion for Nog in the Nog, which is wonderful. I'm going to have to lift myself up now because I need to show my wonderfulness that is my Nog in the Nog
Yeah, I have it
board
over
game
there in one
collection.
of
Oh,
the. It's behind there.
so
Yeah, I like it.
so many promos and oh, this the goodness. I've got figures. I've got extra special things. I've got metal coins. The whole shebang. Yeah, plug it. The Lost Trilogy, Nog and the Nog. Just get it. If you haven't got the game, doesn't matter. Just get the cards. They're wonderful.
Yeah, it's a great game, and it has so much. It has so much flavor in there. So that's what is especially nice, and all the illustrations. It's a really great game.
I love the fact that it looks so beautiful, and yet it's a really nasty game underneath. You stick it
Yes.
in front of gamers, and it's absolutely brutal. I love that.
Yeah, so you see, this is a great connection to Root. Although two different
Yeah,
games, but you see, Root, if you have it on the table, it looks like, oh, this is cute, this is nice, but gameplay is really brutal.
yeah.
That's a really wonderful thing. Yeah. And Nick is saying that's got to be worth £200. So thank you, Tony.
I'll just settle for a pint and a chin wag with Nick at some point because I haven't seen Nick for ages. That's the other thing. We would have met up and had a lovely
Yeah.
pork knuckle at the Brow House. That would have been lovely. But we have to wait another 12 months, I'm afraid, for that.
Yeah. Yeah, that will be one of the effects we see. So nobody knows how COVID will be or what the effects will be next year, and we haven't met yet for a year. So because Essen is not there, so we are at the end now in our minds at end of this year. Although I'm pretty glad when the year will be over, but we don't know. Can we really have conventions again from the start of the year? Laria, of course, or the convention in January in the UK. That's because they are so small, it's way easier to arrange this, but we don't know. And then maybe it's another half year. It will be interesting. And I want to play games. I'm now playing, as you know, a lot online, but still it's different. Even with Skype or with something else with Discord, it's different than playing face to face. So I want to play again. I want to meet you. I want to
Yeah.
talk to you. I want to chat you. And this is not only for Tony. I want to see you all again and have a beer, have a cheap prosecco, as that's what I'm drinking. So we will see. We will see what this will
Yeah, I
bring.
mean, you know how con crud, when
Mm.
we come back from Essen, normally the day after I come back from Essen, I get hit with the worst cold of the year and I'm out for a couple of days. So, with the threat of something that could actually kill you, realistically,
Yeah,
with
yeah,
200,000 people in the same
yeah.
place, it is not within the realms of impossibility that next year's Spiel will be cancelled as well,
Yes, it
which would
is.
be a huge, huge blow.
Yeah, let's hope let's hope for the best, and that's maybe a good ending point here. So because we are running for almost 35 minutes here, so Tony, first, thank you so much, and being here. It was wonderful talking to you, and hopefully we will meet
Yes,
rather sooner than later.
indeed.
So maybe late this year at a small convention, maybe early next year. That would be excellent. And to everybody, thank you for your time, for being here. If you have a question or would like to talk to something about a topic in advance, drop me a mail to uli@spielworxx.de. That is uli@spielworxx.de. And we will have another great guest here next week. And he's already over there in the, that's also good. He's already over there in the chat function. It's Mr. Stronghold himself. It's Stephen Buonacor. He will be my guest here next week. So till then, stay all healthy, take care, and Black lives, of course, they matter. So bye-bye. Bye.